The transmission arrived at noon over Geneva, painted across every screen on Earth like a brand burned into the planet's skin. It was not a request. It was not a negotiation. It was a sentence. High Sovereign Vale Trath spoke from a throne of layered metal that breathed in time with him. His 4 eyes, set wide across a long pale skull, regarded humanity with the patience of a gardener inspecting weeds. Behind him stretched a hall so vast that its far walls vanished into a haze of incense and steam. "Children of the small blue world," he said, and his voice translated itself into every human tongue at once. "The Voran Imperium has counted your lives. It has measured your worlds. It has weighed the value of your continued breath against the worth of your raw materials. The accounting is complete. You will deliver your governments, your fleets, and your industry to our administration. You will accept the marks of our citizenship upon your skin. You have 9 of your days." He paused. He did not smile. The Voran faces could not. But the slow blink of his outer eyes was a thing every soldier on Earth would later remember in dreams. On the 10th day, refusal becomes extinction. The signal cut. Inside the Pacific Allied Command bunker, Admiral Vance Holloway watched the dead screen for a long moment. He was a tall, lean man with iron in his hair and quieter iron behind his eyes. The room around him held generals, presidents, scientists, and a single woman in a plain gray coat who had not been invited but had not been refused either. Dr. Alina Reyes did not need permission to be in rooms like this. She built rooms like this. "Well," said the Russian general, "they are confident." "They have reason to be," answered the Chinese secretary. "We have counted their fleet at 400 dreadnoughts. Our combined navy fields 19. 19 good ones," Holloway corrected, without taking his gaze from the dark monitor. "Admiral, your response when our reply window opens." Holloway turned, and the room turned with him. He looked at Alina. She gave him a small nod, the kind of nod a surgeon gives a colleague before the first cut. He nodded back. "Tell them no," he said. The communications officer hesitated. "Sir, in those words." "In any words you like. Make it polite if it helps you sleep. The answer is the same." The reply went out 12 minutes later, encoded in the formal Voran diplomatic grammar that Alina's linguist had spent 3 years quietly stealing. It was 3 sentences long. It contained no threats, no boasts, no insults. It refused. On the Imperial flagship Talon of Heaven, Subcommander Iskrin read the human reply 3 times. He was younger than most of his rank, with the long gray limbs and silver-grilled mouth common to the warrior caste. He had expected pleas. He had expected bargaining. He had even expected defiance dressed up in pretty words. He had not expected this. The humans had thanked them, in flawless court Voran, for the courtesy of the warning. They had wished the sovereign long life and clear sight. They had then declined the offer of citizenship at this time. The closing phrase was a traditional Voran benediction used by hosts when guests had overstayed. Iskrin felt the small pricking at the base of his crest, that his species had evolved long ago to warn them of unseen things in tall grass. He carried the message to the throne room himself. High Sovereign Vale Trath read it twice. He set it down. He did not laugh because Voran did not laugh, but the slow rasp of his throat plates was the closest thing the Imperium had to it. "They have manners," he observed. "Burn the colony at New Halcyon. Let them watch their children die in good order. Then we will see whether their manners survive." The order rippled outward through 10,000 ships. Iskrin bowed and withdrew. As he walked the long obsidy, the long dark corridor back to his vessel, he found himself looking up at the great viewport, at the gathered fleet, at the wide white sun beyond. He could not say why the sun, in that moment, seemed somehow less bright than it had been the day before. New Halcyon was a green world 4 light-years from anywhere that mattered. Its colonists were farmers, terraform engineers, and the families who loved them. Its defense was a single orbital fortress and 3 cruisers older than most of their crews. It was, in every sense the Imperium understood, a soft place. Sub-Commander Iskrin led the first wave himself. The orders were specific. The Sovereign wanted footage. He wanted screams transmitted in real time across every human channel. He wanted Earth to watch its outermost child die and understand the grammar of the lesson. Iskren brought 60 warships to a system that could field 3. The human cruisers met him at the system's edge. They did not run. They did not surrender. They engaged. For a span of minutes that Iskren would later relive with a private dread, the small human ships fought like animals caught in wire, not winning, not even hopping to win, but tearing pieces from the Imperial line with a savage, accurate intelligence that should not have existed in a species this young. One human cruiser, gutted, broken, leaking atmosphere from a dozen wounds, rammed an Imperial destroyer at relativistic speed. The destroyer simply ceased to exist. Iskren watched the sensor bloom and felt that pricking at his crest again. Then the human ships were gone, all 3 dead in the dark. The path to New Halcyon lay open. Iskren ordered the descent. What he found on the surface was not what the Sovereign had requested. The cities were empty. Not abandoned in panic, not littered with the half-finished meals and dropped toys of a population fleeing a sky going wrong. Empty in the calm, careful way of a house whose owners had locked the door and turned off the lights on their way out. The hospitals had been stripped. The data centers had been wiped to the bare silicon. The crop fields had been harvested clean. Even the orbital fortress, when his Marines breached it, contained nothing but a single human flag and a recorded message that played a piece of slow piano music for 4 minutes and then stopped. The colony of 2 million souls had vanished. Iskren stood in the central plaza of the human capital and turned in a slow circle. There were no bodies. There were no fires. There was no battle damage that he had not himself caused on the way in. The wind moved through the open doors of empty buildings and made a sound like a long exhalation. Sub-Commander, murmured his first officer. How, where? Find me a human, Iskren said. Any human, alive, dead, I require one. They found none. The Sovereign's reaction, when the report reached him 3 days later, was a thing his courtiers spoke of afterward in whispers. He did not rage. He went quiet, the kind of quiet that in a Voran throne was more dangerous than any roar. Then he ordered every colony in the human sphere taken at once. The Imperium moved. World after world fell and world after world told the same impossible story. Empty streets, empty kitchens, empty cradles. Sometimes there were notes pinned to doorframes in human script, recipes for soup, drawings by children, a poem about an old dog. Never a person, never a body, never a clue as to where 2.5 billion human colonists had gone. In a sealed conference chamber beneath the Pacific, Admiral Holloway watched the Imperial advance map and felt nothing he would have called satisfaction. Each green pixel turning red represented homes that men and women had built with their own hands. Each red pixel represented a debt. They are taking the bait, murmured one of his aides. They are not taking bait, Holloway said. They are stepping into a house. The bait was the door. He turned to Alina Reyes, who stood beside a console that showed not the war map but a separate thing, a wide field of small white points, each pulsing in a slow, healthy rhythm. Thousands of them, spread across a third of the galaxy. Doctor, he said, how many of our seeds are confirmed live? Alina's face was thin and tired and very calm. All of them, she said. Every star we ever visited. Every star we were ever allowed near. 11,000 suns, Admiral, they are all listening. She looked up at him. Whenever you give the word. The word did not come at once. Holloway was not a man who pulled triggers in haste. He let the Imperium take 12 more worlds, let their fleets stretch themselves across a third of human space, Let the courier ships of their command lattice settle into routine. He waited until the Voran generals stopped expecting resistance and began expecting tribute. He waited until the news cycles of 100 imperial worlds carried images of victory parades. He waited until the Imperium grew bored. While he waited, Earth's main battle fleet, 310 warships built in secret over the long, quiet years, slipped out of every monitored anchorage and ceased to exist. The Imperium's sensor nets, the most refined in known space, recorded their departure as a series of small, dim glints and then nothing. The fleet did not flee outward. It did not flee inward. It did not, so far as any Voran analyst could determine, go anywhere. 310 dreadnoughts, 60,000 crew, and the entire ground army of the Sol Republic vanished. In the Voran High Council, this was treated at first as a triumph. Cowardice, they said. The humans had broken. They had fled into the dark to die in their own ships of cold and hunger. Let them. The cleanup would be easier without them. Subcommander Iskrin, called to speak before the council, did not share the assessment. He stood in the long hall of polished bone stone and chose his words with care. "My lords," he said, "a coward does not fight at New Halcyon as those crews fought. A coward does not strip a world to bare metal before he leaves it. A coward does not pin a poem about a dog to his own front door. We are not chasing cowards. We are chasing something else." The Minister of War, a fat old Voran named Drosk, snorted his throat plates. "Then what, Subcommander? Ghosts?" "I do not know yet," said Iskrin. "I know only that when a hunter cannot find his prey, it is the hunter who should grow careful." Drosk laughed in his manner. The council laughed with him. The High Sovereign did not. Vale Trath, on his breathing throne, listened. He did not speak. When the laughter died, his outer eyes blinked once at Iskrin, in the small private way that in Voran courts meant, "I have heard you, and I will remember." Iskrin bowed and withdrew. He returned to the Talon of Heaven. He did not sleep that night. He stood at the great viewport and watched the white sun of the imperial capital and tried to convince himself that the very slight grayness creeping into its edge was a flaw in the glass. It was not a flaw in the glass. Far away, in a chamber bored into the dead heart of a moon at the edge of Sol's outer dark, Dr. Elena Reyes stood before a wall of soft white pulses and laid her hand against the cool console. She did not weep. She did not pray. She had stopped doing either of those things a long time ago. "All seeds answering," reported her chief technician. "Network stable, awaiting authorization." Holloway's voice came through the channel, distant and steady. "Doctor, begin with their throat. The line between their core sectors and their outer fleets. Choke them first. Do not kill them yet." "Understood." "Elena." "Yes, Admiral." "Be sure." She closed her eyes. She thought for a moment of her grandmother's small kitchen, of light through yellow curtains, of a song her mother used to sing about birds. She thought of New Halcyon, where her cousin had once farmed apples. "I am sure," she said. She opened her eyes. She pressed the key. Across a strip of the galaxy 1,000 light-years wide, in 78 different star systems carrying imperial supply convoys, fortresses, and trade lanes, the suns began to dim. Not all at once, not violently, the way a candle dims when the wick begins to drown. In the Talon of Heaven's viewport, Subcommander Iskrin saw the white sun of the imperial capital steady itself, hold, then sink, by a measure too small for any instrument but a sharp eye that had been watching all night, into a paler thing. He set down his cup of broth. He stood. He spoke to no one in the soft voice he had used as a child in his mother's house when he was afraid. "Something is wrong with the sky." The first system to die was called Threva. It was an imperial border post, a yellow sun with 3 habitable worlds and a population of 19 million Voran and client species. Threva produced grain, raised cavalry beasts, and exported a particular spice that the Voran nobility valued for its scent. It was a quiet place. It had not been at war in 8 generations. Threva went off the lattice at midnight on a Voran calendar. The communications hub on the capital world stopped responding to ping. The trade convoys stopped arriving at their next stops. The hyperlane beacon, anchored deep in the sun itself, stopped singing. The system, in every measurable sense, became a hole in the map. A scout ship was dispatched. 3 days later it limped back, its hull cold-frosted, its crew thin and shaking. The captain's report, when it reached the High Sovereign's desk, was 3 lines long. The sun is dark, the worlds are freezing. There is nothing alive on the surface that we found in our overflight. We did not land. We could not bear to land. Vale Trath read it 3 times. He summoned Iskren. "Take the Talon," he said. "Take the 2nd and 7th fleets. Go to Threva. Bring me an answer." Iskren went. What he found, when his fleet emerged at the edge of the Threva system, was a sky in which a sun had been replaced by a coal. The yellow star of Threva was not gone. It still hung where it had always hung, a sphere of the same mass, the same gravity, the same orbital authority. But its light was gone. Its heat was gone. Its sound across the wide spectrum of the universe, the low constant song that every living star sang, was gone. The thing in the center of the system was a star-shaped silence. The worlds around it were already dying. Threva Prime had been a green world. The Talon's low orbit confirmed that it was no longer a green world. Snow was falling on its equator. The oceans had begun to skin over. The cities were still lit in places by their own internal grids, but the lit windows were going out, one neighborhood at a time, as the people inside discovered that the heat was not coming back and made the choice their species made in such situations, which was to drink the bitter grain wine of leave-taking and lie down with their families. Iskren stood on his bridge and watched a world die in the time it took him to drink a cup of broth. "Sub-Commander," whispered his sensor officer, "we have movement below us. Something is alive, sir." Iskren leaned forward. On the polar ice of Threva Prime, a single small vessel had risen out of a hole in the snow. It was a human design. Iskren had studied human ships for half a year now and knew their lines. It was lifting clear of the atmosphere with a leisure that suggested no fear of him at all. "Hail them," he said. The hail went out. The human ship answered at once. The face on the screen was an older human male in a plain gray uniform without rank or markings. He looked tired. He did not look afraid. "Sub-Commander Iskren," said the human in Court Voran that was nearly without accent. "My name is Admiral Vance Holloway. I have a message for your sovereign. I would like you to carry it for me. Will you do that?" Iskren found that his throat plates were stuck. He freed them with effort. "I am listening." "There are 11,000 stars in your Imperium that we have visited under flags of peace," Holloway said. "Each one of them is now keeping a small object inside its core. The object is very simple. It can do one thing. It can quiet a star." He paused. Threva was a demonstration. The next demonstration will be larger. The one after that will be your second largest naval anchorage at Brennock. The one after that will be the system of the High Sovereign's summer palace. I do not wish to make the one after that, Sub-Commander. I do not wish to make any of these, but I will." Iskren could not speak. "Tell him," Holloway said gently. "Tell him the offer is the same one he made us. Surrender or be erased. He has 9 of his days." The screen went dark. Behind Iskren, on the great viewport, the dead sun of Threva hung in the sky like a closed eye. Iskren carried the message home. He flew the route faster than any captain in the Talon's history had ever flown it, and when he arrived at the imperial capital, he did not stop to bathe or to change his uniform. He went directly to the throne room in the cold, stained battle dress he had worn in the dead system, and he laid the recorded face of Admiral Holloway at the foot of the breathing throne. Vale Trath watched the message in silence. He watched it 3 times. The court watched with him. Drosk, the Minister of War, watched with the others, and the broad, complacent ridges of his throat plates went pale and then paler, and then a thin, sick yellow as the human voice spoke the names of the systems that would die. When the message ended, the High Sovereign sat very still on his throne. The throne breathed. He did not. "Brennock," he said at last. "My lord," whispered a courtier. "Brennock holds the Second Fleet. Brennock holds the shipyards that built half my navy. Brennock holds my sister's family." "My lord." He named Brennock by name. The High Sovereign rose. He was tall, even for a Voran, and in his battle robes he was a long, pale shadow that fell across the marble of the throne dais. He looked at Iskren. "Sub-Commander, you believe him?" "My lord, I have seen Threva. I believe him." 11,000 stars. He said 11,000. He did not lie. I have watched him through this recording many times. Humans lie with their faces. He did not lie. Vale Trath was quiet for a long moment. "How," he said, in a voice that was no longer a sovereign's voice but only a tired old man's, "could they have placed objects in our suns? We watched their ships. We searched their cargo. They never came near our core." It was Drosk who answered, in a horror that made his great fat body small in his robes. "My lord, the peace missions, the trade envoys, the cultural exchanges. For 30 of our years they sent unarmed ships to our worlds. We let them perform their solar science. Their helio surveys, we laughed at it. We thought they were trying to learn what we already knew about stars. We let them measure. We let them sample. We let them, the High Sovereign said, seed our sons." The throne room was without sound. Far below the throne, in the great hall where the names of the imperial dead were carved into the walls, a small dust drifted down from the high ceiling. It had nothing to do with the war. The building was old, but every Voran in the room looked up at the sound. Iskren stepped forward. "My lord, there is another matter." Vale Trath turned his 4 eyes upon him. "Speak." The human admiral said, "Quiet a star." He did not say destroy, he did not say extinguish. The dead suns we observe, they remain. They have their mass, they have their gravity, they have ceased to burn. Iskren paused. "He has not killed our stars, he has put them to sleep. Which means, the High Sovereign finished, that they can be woken again." "Yes, my lord." A small, terrible hope moved across the throne room like a draft. "Then he is bargaining," whispered Drosk. "He wants something. He wants something he believes is worth 11,000 suns. We can give it, whatever it is. We can give it." Vale Trath did not answer at once. He walked to the wide window behind the throne, the window that looked out over the imperial city, over the white spires and the gardens of the moonflower trees, and the long avenue where the children of the high castes raced their riding beasts on summer evenings. He looked at his sky. His sky held 2 suns. The imperial homeworld was a binary, and the children of the city had grown up beneath both lights, and the songs of the Voran people called the 2 suns the eyes of the mother and the father. The eye of the father was, this evening, very slightly less bright than it had been the evening before. Vale Trath stood for a long time. Then he said, without turning, "Bring me the human admiral. I will speak with him myself." "My lord," said Iskren, "he will not come to us. He will speak only through relays." "Then build me a relay," said the High Sovereign. "Build me a relay in this throne room. I will speak to him with the dying son of my fathers at my back. I will speak to him tonight." Iskren bowed. As he left the throne room, he glanced upward helplessly at the high windows. The father-son, through the colored glass, looked like a coin held under shallow water. He thought, with a cold settling of his crest plates, that the human had said 9 days. He thought that the High Sovereign was going to plead in less than 1. The relay was built in 6 hours, which was the fastest any device of its kind had ever been built in the Imperium's long history. It took the form of a tall, narrow frame at the foot of the breathing throne, and when it activated, the air above its plate filled with the projected image of Admiral Vance Holloway, seated at a plain desk in a plain room, in his plain gray uniform. Behind him, on a small shelf, was a framed photograph of an old dog. Vale Trath saw the photograph and felt, in his long throat, a thing he had not felt in many years. He did not know its human name. The Voran word for it was the word a hunter used when he realized that the trail he had been following for days had been laid for him by something larger than he was. "Admiral," he said, "High Sovereign, you have placed your hand on my throat." "I have." "You will tell me what you want." Holloway folded his hands on the desk. He looked in that moment like an old country lawyer about to read a will. "I want 4 things," he said. "I will name them. You will accept all 4 or none. There is no negotiation on any one of them. Do you understand the terms before I speak?" "Speak." 1. The Imperium will withdraw every ship from every human-claimed system within 30 of your days. Any ship that remains after 30 days will be regarded as a target. "Yes." 2. The Imperium will pay reparations to the families of every human killed at New Halcyon and the worlds taken since. The amount will be determined by a joint tribunal. The currency will be Voran labor and Voran materiel, delivered to human worlds for a period of 50 of your years. A small stir among the courtiers. Vale Trath silenced it with a hand. "Yes." 3. The Imperium will dismantle its colonial administration over the 7 client species you currently hold in indenture. Those species will be returned to self-governance, with humanity acting as guarantor of that arrangement for 1 full generation of their reckoning. A larger stir. Drosk's throat plates rasped a protest. Vale Trath did not turn his eyes from the human. "Yes." 4. Holloway paused. "Your throne, High Sovereign, will pass to a successor of the Imperium's choosing within 1 of your years. You will retire to a private estate. You will live a long life. You will not rule again. This is not a matter of vengeance. It is a matter of trust. I cannot trust the hand that ordered New Halcyon. The Imperium needs a hand I can trust." The throne room was, this time, beyond silence. It was the place silence went when it had nowhere else to be. Vale Trath sat upon his breathing throne, and the throne breathed, and he did not. "And in exchange," he said at last very softly, "you will return our sons." "In exchange," said Holloway, "I will return your sons, all of them. Threva first as a gesture the moment you accept, the rest in stages as each of the 4 terms is fulfilled. The final stars will wake on the day the last Voran ship leaves human space." "And if I refuse?" Holloway looked at him for a long moment. "Then in 9 of your days, High Sovereign, I will quiet the eye of the mother and the eye of the father over your capital, and I will quiet the sons of Brennock and Vosk and Tharn and Elusa and every system your fleet calls home. Your civilization will not end in fire. It will end in cold. Your children will freeze in their beds beneath skis they cannot understand. I do not want this. I will do it." "You would commit such a thing." "You committed New Halcyon." Vale Trath closed his outer eyes. He kept his inner eyes upon the human. "Why," he said, "did you not strike us harder when you first struck? Why Threva? Why not the heart?" Holloway answered without pause. "Because I am not you. Because when I send a message to a man, I send it in a voice the man can survive. Because I would rather have a treaty than a graveyard. Because there are children on your worlds whose only crime is to have been born where they were born, and I will not become the thing that murders them unless you make me. And if I accept, what assurance do I have that you will not use these objects against us again, when our sons are restored?" "You have none," said Holloway. You have only my word and the word of every administration that follows mine. The same assurance, High Sovereign, that the 11,000 worlds inside the reach of your fleet have had of your good behavior for the last 6 generations. It was, in its way, the most terrible sentence the High Sovereign had ever heard, because it was fair. Vale Trath sat upon his throne, and beyond the high window the eye of the Father continued, very gently, to dim. He opened his mouth. He did not speak at once. For a long span of breaths he sat in the failing red afternoon light of his city, and he weighed the things he had been raised to value, the long unbroken line of the imperial succession, the dignity of the Voran name, the unwritten rule that a sovereign did not bend, against a single image he could not push out of his mind. It was the image of a small Voran child, somewhere in his city, going to her bedroom window that night and asking her mother why the son of the father looked sick. He thought of his sister, who lived at Brennock. He thought, with a strange shame, of the dog in the human's photograph. "Admiral," he said, "High Sovereign, I accept your terms." A breath went out of the throne room that the throne room had been holding without knowing it. Drosk made a small, wounded sound. The courtiers did not move. Iskren, standing in the back rank in his stained battle dress, closed his outer eyes and lowered his head, and felt the long fear that had been knotted at the base of his crest for many days begin, slowly, to come undone. "All 4 terms," said Holloway, "without exception." "All 4. Then I will return Threva to you within the hour, High Sovereign. The first son, as I promised, as a gesture. The rest will wake as the terms are fulfilled. I will draft the documents tonight. We will sign at a neutral world of your choosing within a month." "Yes." Holloway paused. "High Sovereign," he said, "thank you." Vale Trath looked at him with all 4 eyes. "For what human?" "For being a man who could be reasoned with, I was not certain. And if I had not been, then I would have done what I would have done, and I would not have slept again." The image flickered, the relay went dark. In the throne room, the High Sovereign sat upon his breathing throne and looked, for a long time, at the empty plate. Then he turned to Iskren. "Sub-Commander, my lord, you will be the Imperium's first envoy to the human worlds under the new arrangement. You will carry our apologies. You will carry our restitutions. You will carry yourself with the dignity of a Voran who has been beaten in a fair contest by a better hand, and you will not flinch from any human eye that meets yours." Iskren bowed deeply. "My lord." "And Sub-Commander." "My lord." The High Sovereign looked at him with something that, on a Voran face, was as close as that face could come to gentleness. "You warned me, in council. I did not listen. I will not forget that you warned me. When the new sovereign is chosen, I will ask that your name be on the list. The Imperium will need men who can see in tall grass." Iskren could not answer. He bowed again and withdrew. That night on the polar ice of Threva Prime, a small dim sun in the sky brightened and brightened and brightened, until it was a yellow lamp in a clearing morning, and the snow on the equator began to remember what it was to melt. The colonies of Threva, what was left of them, came back out into their streets in their thawing coats and looked up at a sky they had thought was the last sky they would ever see. Some of them wept. Some of them laughed. A few of them, the very old ones, sang a song their grandmothers had sung, about a son that goes away in winter and is always, always brought back by something. A year passed. The Voran Imperium did not end. It changed. Its new sovereign was a woman of the trade caste named Vale Korath, who had built her fortune on grain ships and treated her clients well, and who had wept in private when the news of New Halcyon had first reached her years before. She was crowned in a quiet ceremony with 2 human observers in the front row of the hall. One of them was Admiral Holloway. The other was Dr. Alina Reyes, in the same plain gray coat she had worn the day she pressed the key. Beneath every sun in the Imperium, in places no Voran mind could quite forget, Small human-made things continued to drift in slow, patient orbits. They did not pulse. They did not threaten. They simply waited as they had been built to wait. It was understood on both sides that they would never need to be used again. It was also understood on both sides what would happen if they did. In the long, quiet years after, when Vorin children asked their grandparents about the short war with the small blue world, the grandparents would always answer the same way. They would point upward at the warm, familiar sun, the eye of the father, the steady old friend of every Vorin morning. Be kind to them, they would say. Be very kind to them. Why, grandfather? And the old Vorin would look at the sun and remember the evening when it had begun to dim, and the small, terrible image of a human in a plain gray uniform with a photograph of an old dog behind him, and would say, in the soft voice his species used in its oldest stories, "Because they hold our sky in their hand, and they were good enough not to close it.